if we hadn't started the ministry, he hadn't already been working on my heart of like, you're going to have to do this. Like, I had to face every day, like, is this the day that I'm not going to see my husband when I wake up? Like, he would have these episodes. He continued to have episodes, and he would have them in the middle of the night. And I would wake up, and I've done CPR on him more times than I can count. It's just something that I've learning to face and work through that despair, to have hope for even a future with him again. Because for a while, it was like I was shutting myself down. And even in that, with a child, it was like, I'm bringing a kid into all of this. Like, how on earth am I supposed to be a single mom running a ministry?
This podcast explores stories of people who invest their lives to serve others. The topics and interviews in this show are intended to inspire all of us to live our best story so others can fully discover the kingdom effect. Hey guys, welcome to the Kingdom Effect podcast. This is Kevin Beasley with my good buddy Glenn Buckley. What's up, Glenn? How you doing this week?
Buckhouse, that's a new one.
Oh, it is. What is it? Buckshot. Buckshot Buckley. What is a buckhouse?
I have no idea.
Some hunting things, probably somewhere.
It does.
I've heard of brick house, but I've never heard of buckhouse.
Meal house.
Where does this stuff come from? What's up, Glenn? How's your week been, buddy?
Man, going great. Just we got some rain. The rain and the cold weather rolled back through here. A couple of warm days this weekend. I was actually like sweating outside. I was cutting some trees down, and I'm like, man, it's hot out here. And it was like only like 70, but still it felt 70 feels hot right now. Rachel, how was your week?
My week was pretty good. We got to see my brother and sister-in-law and sister and brother-in-law in North Carolina, and I have two other sisters that didn't get to come down and join us. But it was a party this weekend. We got to go to the mountains and hang out.
Ooh, what mountains did you go to?
We went to the Blue Ridge, so Sugar Mountain, North Carolina.
I love Blue Ridge. I usually, when I go to the Blue Ridge Mountains, I go to Blue Ridge, Georgia. I tell you what I like about it is it's a mountain town without all of the tourism.
Okay, I'll have to check it out.
Yeah, so like you go to Gatlinburg and there's just so many people and convention centers and theme parks and all that. Like the most excitement you're going to get in Blue Ridge, Georgia is the Amish store where you go and buy.
I love that.
Amish food. So it's that's just what I like about it, because you really are getting into the mountains without Dollywood and a putt-putt course every quarter mile.
Always worth the mountain trip.
Oh, mountains. I hate the beach. I could care less about going to the beach. Kevin, you hate the beach too, right?
I do, yes. Which is ironic that it seems like every conference I go to is in Florida. It's like, why can't we go to like Anchorage? Anchorage would be the perfect place for a conference. or Colorado Springs or
Antarctica,
That's right.
Yeah. Well, how was your week, man, other than your technical difficulties?
It's good, man. I'm as I just said, in Orlando for the week. It's really weird because I'm in Orlando through Thursday, and then I'm driving back home and meeting Julie and the kids in Atlanta. We're switching cars, and they're coming to Orlando. So I'm going to be 2 weeks without my family, which is super sad. But I'm in the hotel room. It's great. It's a really cool place. It's like a resort just down the road from Disney. But dude, man, if you ever have the option on there to get like a studio, you might want to think twice about it, because it's like a closet, right? So it's super nice room, but it's like a closet and they have to fit all this in this little tiny space, right? So like the shower and it's all in your bedroom, like everything, your little mini kitchen and your shower. So it's really weird, like getting out of the shower and hello, there's the rest of your room. And then they've closed off the bathroom, which is like a tiny closet. So I get claustrophobic in the bathroom.
And you do normally spend quite a bit of time in the bathroom. So.
Like it's really bad when we probably are TMI at this point, but it's really bad when your knees hit the door in front of you. It's like, oh, terrible. It's kind of like being on a bus
or a plane.
So is there a panic button in your bathroom in case you get stuck?
I turned This is really probably going too far, but anyway, I turned the fan on and it sounds like a freaking freight train running through the tiny closet of a bathroom. That makes me more claustrophobic. So it's
See,
just
I would have to turn that fan on to go to sleep. Like I have to have a fan or noise running for me
yeah. Not this one, dude.
to.
Not this one. It's very loud, very, very loud in the tiny
That's
bathroom.
funny, man.
It's been a lot of fun. Except for today, I had to go over to the conference and just get my stuff, like my registration and stuff. So I started driving over there, and it's at First Baptist Orlando. It's the Exponential Conference, and I promise you, I copied and pasted the address from the website to basically to maps. And apparently, there's First Baptist Orlando and First Baptist Kissimmee, and they're on the same road. So I ended up it took me like 3 times the amount of time it should. But what was really super frustrating was I had two map applications running at the same time. And so I was so confused and literally going in circles because it would tell me to make a U-turn, but it would show me on the map to keep going straight because one map was talking and one was showing them.
I feel like there's a biblical analogy in there somewhere.
Have you seen the comedian that has Tourette's and he does the bit about if he was the GPS guy? I can't remember this guy's name, but you'll have to YouTube it because it is hilarious. I guess just Tourette's comedian, GPS. It's funny. Rachel, how you doing?
I'm doing pretty good.
Good. It's
been a fun week.
It's a hot mess on this show, isn't it?
It's all good.
That's right. Well, hey, tell us a little bit about yourself, Rachel.
Sure. So I am a mom to a 2-year-old married to my college sweetheart, and we moved to Tennessee literally the day after our honeymoon. We went on our honeymoon, went back and got our cat and our stuff, and moved to Tennessee, and have been here ever since. I'm originally born in Texas, so I acclimated just fine to the weather and the heat and everything, but I had all kinds of other in-betweens in my life. Lived in Sweden for a time, grew up in Canada, so I've had a varied life by the time I even got to Tennessee and said, okay, this is home.
That's awesome. Why Tennessee?
God made it very clear that we were supposed to be called to Tennessee, and it's such a part of our story. Even the house that we live in now.
That's really cool. So Tennessee, you landed in Tennessee, met your husband in college.
Yeah.
Where'd you go to school?
We went to Houghton College, tiny little Christian school, middle of nowhere, Western New York.
Wow.
Yep.
Wow. So you've traveled quite a bit.
Yes. Yep. I've lived in 3 countries and 4 states.
That's pretty awesome. So you mentioned before your house being a part of your ministry. Tell us about your ministry. What do you guys do?
So we work with women coming out of a variety of crises, primarily single moms now. And I mean, that's always kind of been part of our story. There's been someone, either a single mom or affected by single motherhood. But it was completely and totally an accident. My husband and I just stumbled into it. We had been praying for years about how to get involved in our community and where God wanted us to make the biggest difference. And so we were actively praying for about 6 months, like, Lord, break our hearts for what breaks yours. Show us where you are working in the area in Middle Tennessee. And this was in the fall of 2015, coming into just January 2016. And in January 2016, we were both working corporate jobs at our different offices, doing the whole double income, no kids life, trying to figure out what we wanted. We had just bought a house here in Columbia, and we're just trying to figure out where we could make a difference. And a woman walked into the office and went to the receptionist and said, I'm about to be homeless. I don't know where I'm going to go. I've got a 9-year-old daughter, and this is my story. And they sent a company-wide email, and I read that email and was like, this is supposed to be us. But it was crazy to even think that for me, because believe it or not, I'm an introvert, and I love my space and I love my time, and I love having, this is my safe space. I had to deal with people all day at work, and to come home and be alone was a key part of my personality and how I recharged. And our house had 780 square feet in it. We've put on an addition since then, so it's like 820 now, but it's tiny. It's technically a tiny house. We have 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom. And so when I felt like we need to bring in this complete stranger into our home, the second thought was, that's crazy. We don't have room for her. We don't have space for her. But basically in the email, they'd said, if anyone has a extra, like a mother-in-law suite or a cheap apartment or an extra room. And I just went back to like what God says about giving what you have and sent it to my husband and was like, okay, well, he's going to say no. And I'm not going to feel bad because he makes the decision in this. And he responded within like 5 minutes. It's like, yeah, we need to do that. We need to interview her and see if this is something that we need to do. And so we prayed over the weekend, and it was like every sign pointed to we had to do this, like the sermon on Sunday, the devotion on Monday, the conversations we have with friends about, living extra or living out of what we have. And so we called her that Monday and we're like, okay, well, we don't have much, but what's your story? Where are you coming from? And she wanted to come see it. And we were like, yeah, absolutely. So she came out the following Saturday, saw the farm, saw the room, literally, like I said, 9 by 9. We had a single queen bed in there for them. We didn't even have a dresser or a desk. It was just like a shelf, and cleared out some room in the closet that was extra storage. And we're like, you can have, this is yours. And we rented it to her for $100 a week, which included all utilities. And we told her it would actually include all meals as well, because I was big into meal planning for the family. And she accepted it. And they moved in 24 hours later, complete strangers.
Wow.
And that was just the beginning of it. And it was just, they became such a part of our family. It was just so cool. We made so many mistakes and made so many, things that we could have done better and have learned from. But in the end, we're still friends. We talked last week, checking in on her daughter, and just, we love them so much. They just became family.
That's so cool.
And so they lived with us for 9 months.
Wow. Besides the obvious, the space and the fear of the unknown, like what other fears did you and your husband have going into this?
Literally, we said yes. We said, okay, you can move in tomorrow. They left, and I went into our room and just like cried and was like, what did I do? What am I giving up? It was like the fear of, what else am I going to lose without thinking about it? How am I going to handle our relationship and our marriage when there's no other place for any of us to go to. We had our room, which was the boundary, and they had their room, which was the boundary, but it was like, I couldn't go anywhere that was just for myself. And if we had an argument or if we needed to have a conversation, like, we had to go to our room, which is also tiny. It's like 10 by 10, and we have a California king bed. So it's not like there's room to just stand and talk or sit and talk. It's like we're on the bed or we're out of the room. Living life in front of someone else. That was kind of the big fear of like, what is this going to look like to live life in front of a mom and daughter? And that was probably the biggest challenge, but also our biggest growth area, because we learned how to work things out well with a audience. We learned how to pray better with an audience. We learned how to read the Bible, because everything we did was being taught by this, or being learned by this mom and daughter. Everything from our conversations to our disagreements to, the way that we handled outside influences and inside influences, everything was watched by these 2 ladies.
When she moved out, was it she had gotten to a point where she was ready, to go out on her own, or was there any tension, when she left? Because the reason I asked that is I had a friend of mine who he was a youth pastor, and he and his wife moved in with us for a while, much bigger space. They pretty much had the whole upstairs, but even with that much space, there was just still some tension there, between us. And a lot of it was, kind of selfish things like, you're taking too much taking too much space up in the refrigerator, or, you ate my Oreos, stuff like that. So what was that part of the experience like?
So it was a gradual experience. So we had gotten her, my husband was a recruiter at that time, so he helped her beef up her resume and interview, and actually got a job with the state. We helped her get her daughter in school at the grade level that she needed to be at, because she pulled her out. We helped her get a car, which I'll come back to the car story, because that's like one of my all-time favorite stories of our ministry and what God has done. Basically, we did this transition of like, okay, well, if your goals are independence, here's the independent steps that you need to take. Part of that was making sure that she could afford a place of her own and making sure that she could was comfortable being on her own again after living with us for almost a year. And so what we actually did was transition them. We had bought the summer before a decent camper. I'm not going to say it was a great camper, but it was a decent camper, and basically sat her down in like July, and we're like, okay, well, you're ready to be on your own. And she was like, I just can't fathom that yet. I'm not ready. I don't want to leave the support that I'm getting from you guys. I want to do that. And so we basically said, okay, well, what do you think of like transitioning to the camper? It has a full kitchen, an actual bedroom, tiny little living room. Like you would actually have your own space that's separate from us, but we're still here. Your daughter can still come over after school. We can still take part in all that, be emergency contact, but it's one step further. We actually raised her rent as part of the agreement too. We were like, okay, because that was part of it, was she couldn't fathom paying $700 for an apartment. And so what we were trying to do was get her comfortable with the payments. And she only was there for like 3 or 4 weeks before they were ready to go. And there was tension just before they left, her trying to figure out who she was separate from us, and kind of restart that relationship as someone not part of the Peck family anymore. They came back a couple years later and helped actually build the building that I'm in right now, our little tiny house office. Every 3 or 4 months I check in with them, and they come over for dinner, and we go for Christmas. They're still very much part of our family.
That's great. So how does that tie into the 431 house?
That was the beginning of it. And that was the moment where we're like, okay, there are things here that need to be changed in the way that society handles women coming out of crisis. Basically, what had led her into her situation was a man who was taking advantage of her. He had told her that he wanted a better life for her and her daughter, and was willing to financially support her to get a better apartment, just short term, to get a better apartment and a better car. And once he put her in there, he actually put a contract on the table and asked her to sign for sexual contractual obligations. And she threw it at him and said, I'd rather be homeless than to do this. That's why we took her in and said, okay, she's got a chance, because this was not like a repeat. This was something that someone had just tried to take advantage of her. The system failed her because she couldn't maintain a job that she had and have a child to go to a shelter. She'd have to lose one or the other, because you can't, unless the hours perfectly line up, you can't leave a child in a shelter. And so while getting back on her feet, she would have had to give up her job, which is not going to help her move forward. And that was where we were like, okay, well, if that's the case, then what do these women do? Like, if they get into this situation, if a husband leaves them or whatever, how do they get back to where they need to? We don't do housing at this point anymore, although I wish we could, because that's still such a major issue in the area. That question literally keeps me up at night as I pray about how do we continue to make a difference for single moms. Like, attainable rent, almost impossible, especially in the Spring Hill area. What it boils down to is that we recognize the benefit of community discipleship and someone living in a discipleship relationship with you. And that is the foundation of like everything we do as a ministry today. Everything comes back to that community driven support and discipleship.
Is one of the goals of your organization to get to a point where you do offer some sort of housing?
We would love to do that so much, but that takes a location and funding and all kinds of stuff that we just, right now, we feel like God's saying, focus on the hearts, focus on the souls, and then we'll get there. And we do focus on some of the physical needs too, but it's as a support. So like, we'll connect them to childcare. We'll make sure that they have food through the well. And like, we work with other local partners to make sure that they have all of their needs met. We're there for the building up. Our vision is to provide a place where any woman can find authentic community, compassion, dignity, and full restoration in Christ, so that she has no doubt that she is known, seen, and loved. And so we do that so that she has hope and a plan.
That's great. That's awesome. And how is your husband involved in the ministry beyond, just normal husband support?
So he was a key part of it for many, many years. Part of our story is that literally the week that we founded the ministry, he had a medical crisis, went into spontaneous cardiac arrest, and had an anoxic brain injury from his heart not beating for like 17 seconds. And so he wasn't able to go back to work at that point, to his corporate job. And so we had to kind of reshuffle and figure out all of this stuff while running a ministry. But so he's now involved on kind of the back end. His specialty is in like business management and like I said, recruiting and HR and all that fun stuff. So he runs payroll and he makes sure that our finances are in good shape at the end of the year and just manages all of that for us. But he has much more of a backseat role today than he did at the beginning. The Lord has had to work on my life for me to even be comfortable with being the one doing it, because for many years he was almost like a crutch. Like I couldn't do it alone. I couldn't talk alone. I would not have even been able to do this alone at one point in my life. And so God has slowly used those injuries and that medical history to kind of peel away in my own heart. Like, okay, I've given you this talent, and so you need to step forward and walk into this. Not you as in Justin and Rachel, but you as in Rachel Peck.
It's always important to have support from your spouse. Even with the stuff that I was doing, the rescue stuff was not my spouse's thing, right? Like she just did not. Obviously, she's not a door kicking, gun toting kind of person. It was difficult for her to know that I'm around all of these women in the sex industry. I can't imagine doing a ministry like what you do or what other people do, that and not have the support of a spouse.
Yeah. And if it's possible, it's incredibly difficult, and you have a whole set of unique talents. Like I can think of Leanne, who's in our missions leader group. She's doing it without the support of a spouse, but it is hard, especially for someone like we have young children, young girls. Mm-hmm. So it's like he's transitioned into a different career. He's now a farrier, which gives him flexibility to be a more stay-at-home dad, especially because he actually is the son of a single mom who experienced domestic violence in the home. And so he is kind of the other end of who we're serving, which is why his heart is so tied to this. And for many years, like it was really, really hard on him to watch our clients go through domestic violence. Especially we had one particular young lady who we kept asking her, like, are you safe at home? Are you safe at home? She was like, oh, I'm fine. And one Sunday she literally just called us out of the blue and she's like, I'm not okay. I got beat up this morning. My dad, I don't know where her dad went. Someone called the cops. They heard, and we went, and like her ear was split in two and like just completely beat up. And that was one of the hardest things he had to watch, because it was a father and that was what he had experienced in his home.
She called you guys that day because you were faithful to call and check in with her so many times before. Those of you that are listening, Kevin is not with us anymore, but he did send a question through the chat. So I'm just going to read it, and then, Rachel, you can answer it. So Kevin says, it's fascinating to me that the story you told about the lady having the baby step into independence, God has baby stepped you into what he's called you into. Tell us how you went from just inviting a woman and child into your house to being a formalized ministry.
It's so true that God has baby stepped us into that, because before that first woman moved in, I sat down with a financial planner who was going to help her as well, who had been a single mom and kind of understood. And so we sat and talked and tried to help me understand what was kind of in her head, what she'd experienced, the trauma responses that might come up. Because for context, I was 23. We were 23. Like, we knew nothing about being a mom or parents or anything to help this 37-year-old woman. And so we sat down and she shared all this knowledge, and, she said, well, can I pray for you? And I was like, absolutely. And she prayed for the mom and the daughter and all the other women who would live in our house. Wow. And I literally looked up mid-prayer and was like, she did not say that. She did not say that. That's not, nope. And I don't remember hearing a single word after that, because it was just too overwhelming. I could not fathom one more person. I couldn't fathom having anyone else live in our house. And she was right. There were more. The second kind of out of that one, it was another year and a half. So from September 2016 to February 2018. We didn't have anyone. We just kind of did life. I transitioned actually from the corporate world to home, and started farming full time. That was what we thought our dream was and what we planned to retire on. So we had a little hobby farm that we were building up, and I was doing agritourism and that kind of thing, which is all God's perfect plan, because across the street from us was this commercial building that a family had transformed half into a home. And the grandparents lived there, and they had the granddaughter because she had experienced single motherhood through her mom, and her grandmother had remarried, and so she had been a single mom as well. So there's 3 generations kind of in that house. The middle one, our client's mother was an addict, had poor relationships, and so our who ended up being a client, we didn't know it at the time, but the girl had been abused, and she just did not have the help that she needed. And so she attempted suicide 3 different times, and the last time being in that building, in that front room. And all 3 times the Lord saved her. And after that 3rd time, I sat with her grandmother at the kitchen table, and we called rehab center after rehab center, trying to get someone to look at this woman for more than her circumstances. And every place we called, it was like, well, we can deal with this part of her personality, but not this. We can deal with the suicides, but not addictions. We can deal with this, but not that. And we found one place that was willing to do it for $10,000 a week. And we were like, well, that's impossible. Like, how is anyone supposed to afford that? And they're like, well, you know, you could take a second mortgage out or whatever. It's like, well, that's not this girl. And for the second time, we felt like God say, okay, it's you guys again. And for the second time, I was like, well, what do I know about this? Like, I didn't know anything about being a single mom, and what do I know about suicide and all the trauma that she's been through? And the Lord used me being a farmer to be able to be there, because I didn't have any kind of set schedule. I didn't have any kind of expectations. My pigs didn't care if I was there at 8 or at noon, you know? And so I just showed up, and that was all I did for weeks, and was just like, I am just here because I care if you live or die. That's it. So you can choose to get up out of bed and join me, or you can stay in bed. And her grandmother would let me in the house and like encourage her to go with me. And she, for weeks, for months, just went everywhere with me. And we went to the butcher and to Tractor Supply, and we took care of our chickens and our goats and our cows. You know, we took care of everything together. And slowly through that experience, again, that one-on-one personalized discipleship, she started opening up, sharing more about her story. It was just more than even what I've shared and are able to share. But she had experienced so much, and it was so clear to me that the Lord had put his hand on her life and was like, no, I want something from you. You're going to be more than this. And slowly she started to believe that too. And so we took her to church with us when she was ready. And the first Sunday we came home from church, and she was a little upset. And I was like, well, why are you upset? And she was like, well, you told me that you wouldn't tell anybody what I've told you. I was like, I haven't told, like, I literally haven't even told Justin what you have told me about your life. It's stayed between us, and I've just prayed about it. She's like, well, then why did the pastor say this, this, and this? Like, that's exactly what I've been dealing with.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, that wasn't me. Like, he doesn't even know you're in the room today.
Yeah.
He did after that. Like, I went and told him after that, and didn't tell him anything about her, so that I could honestly say the next like 3 or 4 weeks, every week she would be like, well, he said this today, and that's what we talked about this week.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I know, because we serve a living God who cares if you live or die. And so she came to know the Lord like the 4th or 5th week, and was like, on Palm Sunday, it was like, that's it. I want to know this Jesus who is making it so clear that he's after me. And her life became a 180. She was bringing people to our house, girls that she had done drugs with. At one point, I think they brought their drug dealer with them to church. It was just really cool time in our season in our life again, where one or more of them would stay overnight and come to church. And just, again, there's so much flexibility in my schedule to just drop everything and focus on these girls. It was just wonderful. Her grandfather, like I said, lived across the street and saw this just complete transformation in her life. And so he was like, I want you to do this with other people's daughters and other people's granddaughters. And so he approached Justin and said, well, not only do I want you to do this, I want you to do it here with this building. And so he offered to sell Justin the building, which was, like I said, 5,000 square feet of commercial space with almost 2 acres, for what they paid for it in 1999.
Wow.
And we said, thanks, but no thanks. We're not interested, because we didn't feel like that was a Justin and Rachel thing. And God was like, that's right. It's not a Justin and Rachel thing. It is a 431 thing. And so we literally went to church that Sunday, and a guest pastor was preaching from Cape Town, South Africa, and shared the story of how Peter and John went back to what was comfortable, fishing in Galilee rather than staying in Jerusalem where they had been called, because it was safe and comfortable. And so we're already feeling a little bit convicted, like, oh, like, what are we doing that's like not like, because we were feeling like we're doing uncomfortable things, Lord. Like, people are coming to our house at all times. I'm having to like give up expectations of this perfect home in order to entertain, because I don't know when they're coming. And with farming, it's not like that's a clean job anyways. And so we felt like, giving that up. And he literally, the guest pastor, as far as we can remember, stopped and looked at us and was like, someone here is being called to full-time ministry, and it's time to talk to your pastors and say yes.
Wow.
And that was like the moment where it was like, okay, it's bigger than us. We need to do something about this. We said yes, and we met with our pastors that week, told them about the building, and we were like, hey, do you guys want to join? Like, do you want a building? Because we can make it happen for you. And they were like, that's really cool. God's called you. You need to do this. And it's on your calling for your life. And so we did. We stepped in and we said, okay, that's what we're going to do. God brought a third board member, and we signed the papers on May 10th, 2018, to be a Tennessee nonprofit. 2 days later is when he had his spontaneous cardiac arrest.
Wow.
And an oxic brain injury. It was nuts.
When the injury happened, did you feel like, oh man, God, is this not what I thought this is what you wanted?
We actually felt the opposite, because it was almost because it was the end of April that we'd been called, like I have it written in my Bible. It was almost 2 weeks until we formed the nonprofit because of just stuff. And Justin's, beyond just the nonprofit, Justin felt his calling was to actually leave his job. He felt like part of that sermon was directed to him of, you need to quit your job and leave. But he grew up in poverty with a single mom. And so the idea of not having a steady paycheck was just absolutely couldn't fathom. And so for 2 weeks, I would ask him every night, like, did you have the conversation? Like, are you ready to let go? And not yet. No, I'll do it tomorrow. And so he had the cardiac arrest on a Sunday night before he went back to work. And so we felt like it was God being like, you wouldn't give it up, so I'm taking it from you, and you're going to do this whether you want to or not.
Yeah, but that's great that you guys were able to discern what that was. I can think back to times when things happened and it made me think, okay, am I going in the wrong direction? Right. So I think that discernment is really great that you guys were able to see that for what it was.
I tell people all the time now, I used to think that the Lord spoke with like still small whispers, and through this entire process, it's like, no, it's a 2x4, just upside the head, like thunk.
Yes.
Like both sides if we don't get it the first time. But no, it was just like, even through that summer, like, I'm not going to say that wasn't a hard summer, because that was the hardest summer of our lives, of our marriage. And I was struggling with who I was, because like I said, like I was at that point, I became the income bringer. I was the caretaker because he had to have a heart implant put in. He couldn't drive. I had to take him to all his doctor's appointments. He wasn't working. I had to keep the farm going fully. And then I also had to fundraise for this ministry that I was unexpectedly called to, and actually do the ministry, which are kind of two different jobs by themselves, the fundraising and the
fundraising is a full-time job.
It really is. Yeah. And that summer, and I had no idea, like, it was like, here, you're called to ministry and now go buy a building. And it was like, okay, like somehow I have to come up with $65,000 through asking people. And again, I didn't talk to people. So that was like completely outside of like everything I knew and wanted to do. And yet the Lord brought in $20,000 in a matter of 2 months, which for a not 501c3 brand new ministry, unheard of, is just like that's hard for newer ministries in general, but for someone who literally started in May, by August we had $20,000. It was like,
Wow.
what are we doing with this? It was at that point that it stopped. And our story got even harder because we had been told that we would never have kids. I have medical issues, and obviously he does too. We were in a season of like figuring out what the next steps were for our family, whether I needed to have surgery, whether, what any of that looked like. In September, the end of September, beginning of October, we found out that we were unexpectedly pregnant, like in the middle of him not remembering anything that he said to me while I'm fundraising, while I'm doing ministry, while I have an income. And I was really upset at the Lord for that timing.
Mm.
And I was like, we have prayed for this child for 6 years, but today is when you decided that we're going to have this kid?
Mm-hmm.
Like, how does this even make sense? If we hadn't started the ministry, he hadn't already been working on my heart of like, you're going to have to do this. Like, I had to face every day, like, is this the day that I'm not going to see my husband when I wake up? Like, he would have these episodes. He continued to have episodes, and he would have them in the middle of the night. And I would wake up, and I've done CPR on him more times than I can count. It's just something that I've learning to face and work through that despair, to have hope for even a future with him again. Because for a while it was like I was shutting myself down. And even in that with a child, it was like, I'm bringing a kid into all of this. Like, how on earth am I supposed to be a single mom running a ministry? And that wasn't what, the Lord had for me. Justin has obviously lived so far, but it was still just a rough season. And the fundraising paused, and we couldn't buy the building at that point because I think that God needed us to be ready for the plans that he had, but also for me to be able to step into the role of executive director instead of it again. Like, I just took it on as Rachel Peck. Like, I took it on as myself, and I had to learn to let all of that go and be like, okay, this is bigger than the Pecks. This is bigger than our house. This is a dream that the Lord is giving. I mean, at this point, I can't even count the number of ladies I've stepped forward and literally spoken our vision to us as a vision that the Lord has given them. And they've come alongside us, like word for word, with counseling and with mentoring and with discipleship and with, everything that we do. They have been preparing and planning and praying about in order to come alongside us. That was where we needed to take a rest. And we literally got a year of rest. I had a hard pregnancy and a hard recovery. When we worked with that first girl in February of 2018 to like, when we found out we were pregnant and everything kind of screeched to a halt as I was trying to figure out what was happening here, we served 7 ladies that first year. 3 of them lived with us. The other ones we just discipled out of their own homes. And we would continue to get like referrals from our church partners and word of mouth and stuff. Even if we couldn't help them, we still served those 7. And in 2019, we didn't have a call. We had 1 call the entire year. Like, even going to speak as like much as I could handle with the illness of my pregnancy, all of that, like, we had 1 call. I remember praying right before 2020, like, Lord, like, are we even still called to this? Because we had, like, I understand that we need this rest. We have a newborn now. She was 6 months old. Where are we supposed to go with this ministry? We have this pile of money that's just sitting here and we're not doing anything with. So what are we supposed to do now? And the first week of 2020, we had 7 referral calls.
Wow.
And I was like, okay, it's on. Like, it was like night and day. It was like the switch flipped and God was like, you're on.
Well,
Go do it.
You asked for it, didn't you?
I did. I was like, I need confirmation. And God's like, you got it. Here you go. It got to the point, I think we had something like 30 referral calls over the next like month and a half. And not all of those became client. Very few of them did. But it was still like, for every referral call, I still did the work of trying to find a house for them if they needed to, find them food, like all of the work that we normally do. And so I finally went back to the board and was like, I'm dying here. Like, I can't continue to be a mom to a 6-month-old and do all these calls and have a job that provides enough food for my family. And so can we reevaluate this? And so the board voted to start paying me a salary at that point. And that was 2 weeks before COVID hit. And we would not have survived as a family if we hadn't had that paycheck. So I took a very small paycheck that first year, and we couldn't even pay it in like the slowest months. We had to supplement that out of, Justin started building up a business again for his farrier work. And we survived that year, barely, but we survived. God, in 2020, we served 12 ladies with the side-by-side program, and we touched the lives of like 60 that year.
That's amazing. So the purpose of this podcast is kind of spotlight or highlight ministries like 431 House and others that we talked to. And secondly, through that is to, tell your story and inspire people who are either feeling a call to start a ministry and or hesitant for one reason or another, or people who have started a ministry and maybe they're feeling like it's time to tap out or whatever. So what advice would you give those two groups of people, the people that are struggling with the call, and then the people that are maybe feeling discouraged and at the end of the rope?
For someone who's struggling with the call, like I said, one thing I've learned is that the Lord makes it clear. He makes it clear through circumstances, through his word, when he's called you. He also makes it clear that he is calling you regardless. Like, regardless of where you are in your life, I firmly believe that everybody is called to ministry of some sort. You may not be called to start a ministry, but you may be in a season where he's preparing you to start a ministry and you need to be serving somewhere to get ready for that. If there is a passion on your heart for something that just bugs you, then look into where you can take part in that, especially if you've been praying for the Lord to use you. Like I said, that's a dangerous prayer to pray, and he answers it. Like when you ask him, break my heart for what breaks yours, he goes, yes, like that's the prayer that I've been waiting for, and I want you to get involved in this. And he puts it on your heart. Like, I know that he's done that for you, and he's done that for us for sure. And then for someone who's getting ready to tap out, I guess my biggest question is like, where are you being poured into? Because I've reached that point several times over the course of our ministry, and we're not even 4 yet. We'll be 4 in May. There's been times when it's taken someone else to like sit me down and be like, you're doing too much. This is not okay. You need to back out and you need to do this. And so remembering that it's okay to rest and to figure out where you're being poured into. The pastor of the church that we used to attend always used to say, who's your Paul and who's your Timothy? Who is pouring into you and who are you pouring into? And so that would be my question for people ready to tap out, is like, who do they have around them in order to make sure that they are not completely burning out?
Yeah. Maybe they need that break,
Yeah.
Kevin and I talk all the time about there's nothing wrong with, in some cases, going to your board and obviously in prayer, hey God, I just need a season of rest, and there's nothing wrong with that at all. And so that's really good stuff. The second thing is I've got your website on here, 431house.org. So what are some ways that people can get involved? Obviously, as always, people can support financially. It sounds like just from what you talked about tonight, people can invite you to come speak to their church or other groups. What else? Is there anything else that they can do?
Yes, we have a waiting list right now from our major event of almost 31 women who want our services that we can't provide them right now because we don't have the mentors and the budget coaches and the practical advisors to come alongside. We're very careful that we don't burn out our volunteers. So we only do one-on-one relationships with our mentors. And they all have to be women, because the majority of the ladies that we serve, a crisis has led them to single motherhood, and they need women to support them rather than men to come in and fix it. If you're interested in being a mentor or a budget coach or a practical advisor, definitely reach out. We've got on our website, if you go to 431house.org/volunteer, we added a volunteer coordinator to our team who has done an amazing job of just keeping an updated list on the volunteer page. And so we have different events. Known Seen Love, we haven't even talked about our Known Seen Love event, but that's our biggest. We do a Valentine's Day event for single moms every February. This year we're expanding that into any of our events. Are called our Known Seen Love events. And so we have a Mother's Day garden party coming up. We do monthly family meals for our ladies. So we have these one-off events that someone can get involved if they're not quite sure they're ready to commit to a mentorship.
And all those details are on your website, right?
Yep, you can go to 431house.org, and if you want to go to the volunteer page, it's /volunteer. So we try to make it as easy as possible to figure out how to get involved.
That's awesome, Rachel. Obviously, we get to talking to people on the show, and we're like, gosh, we wish we had more time.
I know.
There's so much more to tell. We will definitely have you back again and talk some more. I just want to encourage all of the people that are watching or listening to check out the website 431house.org. Guys, please go there, check it out. See if this is a ministry that you feel called to. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't, and that's okay if you're not, but definitely go check it out and pray and see how God leads you to support the 431 House. We appreciate you guys for listening. Rachel, thanks so much for being here. And we'll see.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. And we will have you back. I promise. We will see you guys next week on The Kingdom Effect.
Hey guys, thanks so much for listening to the Kingdom Effect podcast. Hop over and join our Facebook page and leave us a review on your favorite podcast platform. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week on The Kingdom Effect.